You're listening to The Monetized Mom, the podcast that teaches moms of faith how to monetize their expertise online to create influence, impact, income, and more importantly, financial independence. I'm your host, Flo Alexander. Let's chat. Hey, Money Mamas. Welcome to the Monetized Mom podcast. I'm your host, Flo Alexander, and in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about me quitting my job. So if you want the tea, stay tuned. Now, before I get started, I want to share a free resource with you. The Monetized Mom Master Playbook is my 4-part framework for turning your expertise into a profitable online business. And yes, you heard right, it's free. You can grab it now at themonetizedmom.com/freebie. Again, that's themonetizedmom.com/freebie. Now let's get on with this episode. So quick PSA before we get started. The podcast is now available on my new YouTube channel, The Monetized Mom, which I'll link in the show notes. So I want you to go ahead and subscribe if you have been previously listening to the podcast on the Mama and Money YouTube page. The episodes are no longer there. So you want to go and subscribe to the Monetized Mom podcast on YouTube, and I will leave the link in the show notes. Okay. So now that that is out of the way, let's talk about my career journey. Now, many of you may not know this, but as of about a month ago, I'm no longer working a 9-to-5 job. I decided not to return while I was on maternity leave, and I just transitioned fully into my business, into full-time entrepreneurship. So I wanted to share a few things that I did before making the decision that could perhaps help someone else who is at this point of transitioning into their business full-time. Now, a few people on Instagram wanted me to share why I left my corporate career or left the corporate space. And the answer is quite simple: freedom. Freedom is the answer. And I realized very quickly after having my daughter, which is my first child, that corporate America is not conducive to parenting, period. No matter how you flip it, how you turn it, how you squeeze it, it's not conducive to parenting. And I was blessed to have paid maternity leave, but I know a lot of moms who don't. But even being in a good position in my career, meaning, I was able to work from home, I was at a management level, I had a lot more flexibility than many people may have, it still wasn't great for my family life. I basically had no vacation days left after having to use it for my leave. And anyone with kids, if you listen to this, you probably have kids, but you know that the majority of that time is going to be spent taking care of sick kids anyway. Like if the daycare calls and you have to take a day off and then they have to be out for a day, like you automatically will lose your sick days and your vacation days. And because I had to apply those to my maternity leave, I literally had maybe 5 days left and that would have been gone easily. So it just didn't make sense to go back from that perspective, among other things. And I'm going to try to keep this very concise because I have a lot of thoughts when it comes to parenting, specifically motherhood and corporate America and how it's not very well supported. I have all the opinions about that, but I want to keep it very concise into what we're talking about, which is transitioning to full-time entrepreneurship. But anyway, going back to work after having my daughter was stressful. I will tell you that. To make matters worse, it was in 2020. We don't need to even address what happened then, but you know what happened in 2020. And I was so stressed that my milk production drastically declined and I had to stop nursing and even pumping. And I didn't want that same situation to happen with my son. And to make matters even more challenging with my son, my maternity leave was cut in half from the amount of time that I had with my daughter. With my daughter, I had 12 weeks. With my son, it was cut down to 6 weeks. But then I was able to use, or I had to, I had to use all of my sick days plus all but 40 hours of PTO. So that gave me a total of maybe like 8 to 9 weeks of maternity leave. So either way, my time was cut short. And in no way do I believe that 6 weeks is enough time for a mom to get acclimated to having a child and then being thrust back in the workplace. I know that moms do it because they have to, but it is not ideal. I don't care if you had a vaginal birth or not and you feel like you're healed, you are not. You need that time to bond. You need to get acclimated. At that point, for a lot of kids, they aren't even sleeping through the night. And so you're not well rested. So you can't even show up as your optimal self. So like I said, I'm trying to stay concise because I'm very passionate about this topic, which is why I'm trying to teach moms how to build their own economy, how to be financially free, whether that's, debt freedom, getting their personal finances together, and or building a business. This is the reason why, and I'm very, very passionate about it. So let me reel myself back in. But the point was, for me, it just didn't make sense to go back. And I really, truly wanted freedom. I wanted time freedom. I just wanted freedom of life that entrepreneurship in many cases gives you. But anyway, this wasn't a decision that I made on a whim. So I want to make that very clear. For years, my husband and I had been financially planning for this as an option. So we paid off our debt, all of our debt, and we saved aggressively while simultaneously I was building the business. But here's the catch. We put ourselves in a financial situation to where the business doesn't even have to be successful for me to continue staying home. And that's the one thing, as a business coach for moms, I like to just put it out there and put it at the forefront. A lot of people will tell you, you want to build your business so that you can quit your job. I would tell you, get your personal finances together so that when you're building your business, it's not stressful. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to be in a situation where your business has to be successful and therefore you're grinding and you're stressing yourself out. Put yourself in a financial position where you can build your business with ease. But anyway, with all that being said, I do recognize that I do have the privilege of having a spouse who supports my decision to come home, one, and financially can support our family if this business does not go well, or if something turns, you know what I mean? So I understand that is absolutely a privilege, but that does not take away from my desire to make sure that this thing is successful. I think one thing about me is I'm a high achiever. I'm a high achiever. If you had a model of high achievers, I am she. That is I, right? And so is my desire to make sure that this thing is successful more than it has been. So I recognize that privilege. And I know some people who may be listening, you may not be married, you may be a single mom, or your spouse may not be able to financially support the family on his own. But this, again, goes back to my whole concept of together making sure you're in a financial position to where if you do step away to build your business or to just stay at home, you have the financial means to be able to do that because you've done the work. You've paid off the debt, you've budgeted, you've saved, you've done all those things, so that building the business isn't a necessity, so to speak, or is also not stressful. So anyway, let me get back again because I can get passionate about that as well. But anyway, I wanted to give you guys some tips and kind of share some things that you may want to consider if you are thinking about transitioning from your 9-to-5, things that I had to think about in this transition, and quite frankly, things that you need to think about if you are going to make this transition. So first of all, I think you need to really understand what your why is. I literally asked this question in regards to everything. And I think it's important to really know why you want to leave your job. What you may think is the need to leave corporate could just be the need for a new job in a better working environment. And the truth is not everyone is cut out for entrepreneurship. And that's real talk. I literally just had a conversation with one of my entrepreneur friends, and it's hard. It's quite frankly hard. Not hard in a sense that there's so much stuff that you have to think about and consider, and challenges that you have to overcome, and solutions that you have to develop. So it's not for everyone. If you're not that type of person who kind of thrives in that environment, or who's willing to take on those different types of stresses, entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. So don't think that it's necessarily going to be a solution to a bad working environment. The truth may just be that, hey, I just need to find somewhere else to work that is more conducive to the way that I work and is a more positive environment. So before you say, hey, I want to quit my 9-to-5 job to become a full-time entrepreneur, you need to figure out if entrepreneurship is truly what you want and desire, or if it's that I just want a better job or a better career or a better company or something change within the corporate space. The second thing that you really need to consider is, can you afford it? Frankly, can you afford it? Again, I don't subscribe to the idea that you quit your job and build your business. Like, no, that's irresponsible, especially if you have children. I wholeheartedly believe in getting your personal finances in order so that you can build a business without pressure. I believe that that is the most responsible approach. And I've always been of the persuasion that business should be a supplement to the work you've already done and not a necessity. So a supplement to the financial work that you've done and not a necessity. At this point, I don't follow these people anymore, but when I was younger and single, the thing was quit your job and build your business, take a risk, believe in yourself. That is completely financially irresponsible if you have not saved up money, have a plan for your retirement, if you have not paid off debt, if you do not have a plan to make sustainable income. That is completely irresponsible, especially as a parent. So you want to make sure you take care of the home front first. Make sure you are financially stable and secure before you leap into a business that can be very dynamic when it comes to income. So can you afford it is the second question that you need to ask yourself realistically. And this also brings up the point of deciding whether or not you're going to take a salary from your business. We don't necessarily need to talk about that now, but if you have to have money coming in, then you know that you need to get your business to a point where you can take a salary. So that may mean that you're working longer in your 9-to-5 as you build your business, as opposed to just quitting your job and hoping that you generate enough cash to be able to pay yourself. So anyway, that's all stuff that I think is much later in your decision making, but you have to figure out first and foremost, can I afford it? Will my kids have food? Will they have clothes? Will we have a roof over our head? Will we have modes of transportation and all that stuff? The third thing is, are you disciplined enough to run a business full time? Now, one of the best pieces of advice that I came across years ago, before I was even in this transition, was having a plan for how you're working your business once you leave your 9-to-5. The advice was having a plan. The person at that time, she had just transitioned and she realized, she was like, I didn't have a plan. So I was sitting there twiddling my thumbs, like, what am I supposed to do? Because in your 9-to-5, you're so accustomed in many cases to being told what you need to work on, what project, what deliverables you have to do. And in business, you're defining those things for yourself. And so this person ended her 9-to-5 job, went into full-time entrepreneurship. And the first day of official entrepreneurship, she was just like completely unproductive. So that was one of the best pieces of advice that I gained from that, was like having a plan. Most people quit and aren't sure what to do, so they waste a lot of time. I created an ideal schedule that mapped out exactly what I would do each day so that I wasn't twiddling my thumbs and wondering where money was going to be coming from. So the question is, are you going to actually do the work of running a business or just be on social media all day? Are you really going to have the discipline that it's going to take for you to do the work? Because it's work. Running a business is work, okay? It's a lot different from being an employee where you can leave and not have to worry about some stuff in most cases. And, it's not your job or responsibility to make sure the ship stays afloat unless you're like the CEO or something like that. But in this case, you are the CEO and you do have to make sure this ship doesn't float. So that means that you need to be strategically working on things that are going to progress the business and make sure you're generating revenue into your business. So I actually find this funny though. My husband, literally, I was telling him I had like a list of things I needed to do the next day. He was like, oh, you have like a list of stuff that you have to work on? And I'm like, yes. How do you think this thing runs? How do you think we generate money? I just don't sit here. I thought that was funny because I believe a lot of people think that is that, oh, you're a mompreneur, a stay-at-home mom, work from home mom, however you want to define it. But a lot of people just think that, oh, I just, to do this, dabble in this and that. I'm very, very strategic and intentional about how I spend my time because it's limited. So anyway, you have to be disciplined enough to run a business full time. So you have to ask yourself that question. Am I going to do the work? Am I going to be disciplined? And then the last thing that you need to think about, is very important. You need to think about insurance, retirement, taxes, financial planning. All those things are important, even if you are no longer in a corporate career. Now, this could really honestly be an episode on its own, but you need to have a plan on how you're going to continue to be covered by insurance, how you're going to save for retirement, if you're going to move your retirement. So if you have a 401k, are you going to leave it there? Or are you going to move it somewhere else to another IRA? Tax implications. Is your husband going to decrease the amount of money that comes out in taxes so that you guys have increased cash flow? What does he need to change in his elections for taxes? There are so many things to consider. Financial planning, what does that look like? This is why it's important to not make this decision off the cuff just because I hate my job, therefore I'm going to quit. No. We are responsible adults here. And so these are all things that you need to think about. And so you need to start figuring this stuff out, asking questions to a financial professional. And beforehand, before you make the decision and turn in your 2 weeks or whatever notice that you turn in, you need to make sure you at least thought about, insurance. How am I going to, cover that? What am I going to do with my retirement? All these things are things that need to be thought about before you make that decision. That a lot of times I feel like in the online space where entrepreneurship is really glorified, we talk about the freedom and all that stuff, but we don't get into the details that are very important to make sure that this thing is actually sustainable. And a discussion that one of my friends and I had was a lot of people were a part of the Great Resignation, and by timing, you could say that I'm a part of the Great Resignation, but a lot of them had to go back to work because this stuff was not figured out. It wasn't figured out how they were going to get consistent income in their business. It wasn't figured out how they were going to afford insurance because medical expenses are expensive when you do not have insurance coverage. So these are all things that you need to take in consideration before you decide to leave your 9-to-5. So again, these are my top things that I think you should think about, some things that I had to consider. But I will say that I am loving entrepreneurship, or full-time entrepreneurship so far. And I knew that I would, but it's good to actually be able to live it out and actually get to be in this thing full-time and really do what I love and what I'm passionate about. And I would definitely love to help you on your journey to entrepreneurship. So with that being said, you want to make sure you join the waitlist to the Monetized Mom. Enrollment will be opening up sooner than you know. So get on the wait list. Just visit themonetizedmom.com and that will allow you to get on the wait list for the enrollment period that's coming up very soon. Or you can just click the link in the show notes and that'll get you there as well. Anyway, I love to answer your questions on the transition to full-time entrepreneurship, my thoughts on the corporate space and how it supports mothers or the lack of support of mothers and parents in general. Anyway, just let me know. Send me a message on Instagram at The Monetized Mom. And as always, if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. And with that, I'll talk to you in the next episode.